Welcome to the Authority File, the academic library podcast from Choice, brought to you this week by ACRL and Choice. I'm Bill Mickey, the host of the podcast and the editorial director at Choice. This week, Choice's digital media specialist and my podcast co-host, Mark Derks, is joined by Leslie Madden, Denita Hampton, and Laura Carscaddon to talk about their new book, Now You're a Manager, Quick and Practical Strategies for New Mid-Level Managers in Academic Libraries. This is episode 3 of a 4-part series, and in this episode, Leslie, Denita, and Laura discuss management techniques for a rapidly changing environment.
So one of the types of teams that gets talked about in your book is, you call them work teams. And I think we've been sort of talking about this a little bit, sort of with building teams across departments or across groups. Does any of you have a specific example of a work team that you put together within your management circle? And do you have an example of why you thought it was necessary and what the outcome of that group was?
So this is Laura again. Thinking about the consolidation with the 2-year school that we did, there were some very specific work groups we put together with that. One was the Library Instruction Outcomes and Assessment Group, and that pulled people from the downtown campus and the perimeter campuses together to try to identify some specific learning outcomes, looking at those first 2 years, which are the years we have students in common, regardless of what campus they're at, to try to identify where those students need to be at the end of those 2 years. And it served the purpose of bringing together some people from across the campuses to start helping us talk together that way. And the other one that was also tied in with that consolidation that we put together was the Spring Share Consolidation Working Group, because we both were Spring Share schools. You know, we both had LibGuides and LibChat and all that. And we had to merge those services. And then we needed to think about what some of those services looked like after we merged them. Both of those teams did a great job. They really were able to come together and think about what was needed, and they created some ongoing recommendations, in some areas staffing recommendations that we were able to implement. And so those worked out very, very well, and they got people talking together across those campuses.
That's great. And it seems like with bringing the two different campuses together, pulling those groups together allowed people who probably didn't know each other to meet and to work towards a common goal. That sounds like a really powerful way to organize around a specific objective, building the work group.
One thing we did with those is we gave both of those groups written charges that identified what their deliverables were as well.
Sure.
That's something, it was very common at the University of Arizona when I was there, and I think it's very useful for groups that have a specific task or area that they're charged with, is to have that charge be clear, so
Sure.
they know here are the lines and we don't have to go past this.
Yep. Yeah, I think without a clear charge, oftentimes a group can either feel lost or they can feel that they have free reign to determine exactly what it is they want to do, and not even exactly, but to determine what the direction should be, and that direction may not be the direction that the library needs or that the group itself needs. So having those clear directives, I imagine, helps to alleviate some of those sort of wandering issues.
Middle managers. Are you one? Do one or more work for you? Maybe you hope to be one sometime soon. With chapters on topics like creating a respectful workplace, managing university bureaucracy, and managing change, the recent ACRL book, Now You're a Manager, provides you with the insight you need to build productive teams and equips you with practical tools for navigating management's day-to-day challenges. For 15% off the cover price, go to the ALA store. That's alastore.ala.org, and use the coupon code ACRL1572.
So you also, in Chapter 3, talk about Eileen Wasserman's 3 ways that respect or lack thereof are communicated. And I found this really interesting, that the three ways are simply how people talk to each other, whether people talk to each other, and what people say to each other. Is it possible to unpack the how, the whether, and the what a little bit, and talk about like the ways in which people talk to each other, how that displays respect or a lack thereof? What are some specific things that you look for, and have you coached the people that are working for you in specific ways to make time to talk with one another, or do you as a manager find that you have to bring that into your own sort of interactions with the people that are working on your teams and in your groups?
So I know I pulled this citation into this portion.
Okay.
um, and it struck me a lot too when I was reading her article on this, because it so much of what we do, we're dealing with people on a daily basis, and we read ourselves into things. And so, when you're talking about how people talk to each other, I know, like so many in this profession, I'm an introvert, and there are days that I would really like to not talk to people, and just, I'm going to use the word grunt at them, but grunt at them because I don't want to talk to people. But that's the other person is going to read something into that, and they're going to read that I'm angry at them, or that I'm upset. Even if I, you just say something off the cuff without thinking about how you're saying it, it can be problematic. And I think it's especially problematic at a manager level, because there's that whole other thing that they're thinking about. Oh, my manager's mad at me, and she was just short with me, and she didn't. What have I done wrong? And it might be that I dropped the shampoo on my foot in the shower that morning. It's not that person. So it's really thinking about how I talk to people when I look at these. And then whether people talk to each other. Again, we're a profession with a lot of introverts, and sometimes people don't necessarily. They're in their own heads, and they don't always say hello as they walk by. I know that but there are people who are very bothered by someone just not even greeting them, and it's reminding people to say hello to people. We've had people in the past who were extremely bothered that there were folks who would walk past them and never look up or acknowledge their presence. And so it that takes coaching on both sides to make sure the one person understands that this person isn't doing it to be disrespectful of them. It's they just didn't think to say that, but also to coach the person who didn't say hello to say, just acknowledge their presence. You don't always have to say hello, good morning, how are you? This is the best day ever, but just oh hi.
Yeah, a simple acknowledgement can sometimes go a long ways.
Hmm.
Absolutely.
And then of course, what people say to each other. We all know there are things that we would never consider saying, and hopefully we would never think. Um, but there are also things that are built in that are problematic for folks. I've really worked to think about gendered language and try to draw some of the gendered language out of my regular speech instead of saying you guys, you folks,
Yeah.
because it's not something that comes naturally to me to think about that, because I didn't grow up thinking about it, but it is very important to other people.
And I have to agree with Laura. It's taken me a long time to actually. Part of my personality, which I'm working on, is that I sometimes say exactly what's on my mind. It might be tactful, but it's too aggressive.
Mm.
So I've had to learn to stop and think in my head how to talk to to a person without them feeling that I'm disrespecting them. And I also know body language is is a lot goes with that also sometimes. So I try to be aware uh, of my body language, that I'm not trying to. I'm not looking like I'm getting ready to pounce or I'm mad at you. I'm just trying to make sure we're on the same page as far as a policy or procedure. So
Mhm.
um, I think it's something that I'm always learning, and I'm always trying to coach the staff to think first and to communicate. Make sure you realize that person that you're talking to has feelings just like you. So make sure you're communicating in a way that is respectful, and they're not going to be offended. because we do. It's very diverse, very diverse library here. So Laura is absolutely right about all that she just said.
And on the other side of that, I've had to coach employees a couple times not to take everything personally.
Yes.
So, a tone of an email, or that someone didn't acknowledge them as they passed them in the hall. And so we've had to have some discussions about, I really don't think that person intended to be rude to you, and to try to help them to develop some skills not to take everything so personally. And that's a difficult thing.
You just heard from Leslie Madden, Denita Hampton, and Laura Carscaddon. This concludes episode 3 of our 4-part series. This episode was brought to you by ACRL and Choice. Be sure to join us for the next episode, where we'll discuss navigating change in libraries.
Actually, most of my staff embrace the change. I mean, because for me, change is different, and I like change.
You can search for and listen to all of the episodes of the Authority File podcast on iTunes, Google Play, or Stitcher. You can also find the podcast on our website. Just click on the librarianship drop-down. If you like what you hear, please take a moment to give us a review on your favorite podcast app. That's all for this week. Thanks for joining us.